Hi, welcome, and thank you for joining the WESIS webinar series. My name is Lynn Dome, Women in Cybersecurity Executive Director. We often go by our acronym WESIS, as in We Sisters, because that's exactly what we are, a cyber sisterhood. And before I go ahead and launch it on over to this fabulous Sentinel One webinar today, I'm just going to share a little bit more information about the WESIS organization. Hope I need to play this from the start here. Ooh, sorry about that. I went ahead. There's a problem here with let's see if I could give it a shot again. I seem to be like having a connection problem. So, well, you know what? I'll just go ahead and not share any slides because it's not coming up right now. Everything is like closing out on me. So be it. All right. Wait a second. Let me see, we'll do this over here. Nothing like a live webinar for us to have technical glitches, right? So we're going to give this a shot again. Just share a little bit about the WESIS organization. And so we are a 501c3 nonprofit, a member-based organization with over 4,800 members of women, male allies, and advocates, all with a strong mission and passion to recruit, retain, and advance women in cybersecurity. And we do so by creating opportunities. So we have many different ways of engagement within the organization. We have a member forum where all our members can network and connect together. And inside that forum, we have special interest groups such as neurodiversity in cybersecurity, Latinas in cybersecurity, data privacy, cybersecurity law. You name it, we have a special interest group in there for you. And if you can't find it, you could go ahead and launch your own special interest group. We have many different training programs such as the SAN Security Training Scholarship, an AWS Learning Series, and our gamified cybersecurity challenges made possible by Target. We have newsletters, webinars, speaking and media opportunities, scholarship grants and awards, and of course our annual conference, which is still a major initiative of the WESIS organization. Our conference is coming up in Denver, Colorado, September 8th through the 10th. In addition to that, we have virtual summits, our leadership summit, and our virtual career fair. Next week, we have the virtual career fair, March 25th, and then WESIS Around the World, which is a representation of all our affiliates. We have over 37 affiliates worldwide, and they're going to be hosting a WESIS Around the World, and that's on March 26th. If you're interested about any of our events, you could go on wesis.org and check everything out under events and also initiatives. We have a Job Board Plus Plus, where our strategic partners recruit from year-round, and all our members have the ability to update their profiles and upload their resumes. We participate in market research, a Veterans Assistance Program. We're really pleased to announce that Sentinel One is not only hosting today's webinar, they're a strong strategic partner of ours, and they're also an employer partner in our upcoming Veterans Apprenticeship Program. We have a mentor-mentee program that is comprised of 707 mentees and 185 mentors, where we have a 12-month structured framework that's designed to upskill and up-level women, no matter where they're at, preparing them for their next level of career advancement. We have 37 professional affiliates, 114 student chapters, and the list of the WESIS opportunities goes on and on. And we owe that all thanks to our strategic partners. They're the foundation of the entire WESIS organization: AWS, Bloomberg, Carnegie Mellon, Cisco, Facebook, Lockheed Martin, Microsoft, Optum, Google, Nike, Sentinel One, who brings us the webinar today, Workday, Federal Reserve Bank of New York, Flatiron, Fortinet, Here Technologies, Home Depot, IBM, Oak Ridge National Lab, Palo Alto, SANS Institute, SAP, SpearTips, Starbucks, Target, University of California, San Diego, and Verizon. And so before I hand it over to the Sentinel One team, I'd like to encourage everyone that's joined us today to ask questions. At the bottom of your screen, there's an option there, a chat option, to ask lots of questions. This type of webinar is here, and we have these fabulous ladies here presenting this information to you in order for you to have as much engagement as you want to ask these questions, and your questions will be answered live. And so if you're not already a subscriber to our newsletter, you go to wesis.org and subscribe and become a part of the WESIS community. We'd love to have you. In addition to becoming a part of our newsletter or becoming a member, you could also grow with us on social media. We're on Facebook. We have a Facebook group, thriving Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And so with that, I would like to go ahead and hand it over to Patty and the fabulous Sentinel One team.
Thank you so much, Lynn. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we could hear you just fine.
Great, great. So welcome, everyone. Thank you for spending a little bit of time with the Sentinel One women's leadership team. I just wanted to share a slide, give you the names of the presenters and the topic we're going to talk about today. So today I bring to you two additional cyber leaders from Sentinel One, Diana Green, who is our VP of Revenue and Operations, as well as Suzanne Portugal, who is the head of Global Sales Enablement. And the topic we're going to talk about today in a fireside chat forum is women in sales, and talking about insights that have guided our business careers, and just share some suggestions with you on how you can potentially take your career to the next level. So again, we appreciate you spending some time with us today. And as Lynn said, if you have questions, please feel free to share them in the chat. So welcome, Diana and Suzanne. We appreciate you taking your time to be here with me today. One of the things I will say is it was actually a really nice exercise that we all worked together to put together this webinar, because I think we had an opportunity to kind of slow down a little bit and learn a little bit about each other. So I'm going to start off and share with people a little bit about who Sentinel One is, and where you can learn about open job requisitions with Sentinel One. And obviously, you know, you can reach out on LinkedIn to Diana, Suzanne, or myself. Sentinel One is actually a next-gen endpoint protection and endpoint detection and response technology solution, and we were founded in 2013. We are headquartered out of Mountain View, California. We have global offices around the world. And we are a pre-IPO company, and currently we have about $697 million in VC funding, Series F funding, and our valuation is estimated at about $3 billion. So we're growing very fast. We've hired a ton of people. We were just having a sidebar conversation about that before we logged on to the webinar. And we're over 800 employees today, but growing very, very fast. And we have over 5,500 customers globally. So that's a little bit about Sentinel One. If you go on our website and go to About Us, you will see the career opportunities are posted there. So again, welcome Diana and Suzanne. I appreciate you both taking some time to be with me today. I thought it would be great to share a little bit about yourselves, both like sort of personally, but then also shift over and tell us a little bit about your career history and how you landed at Sentinel One in cybersecurity in the leadership position that you hold today. So Diana, would you want to kick it off?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, Patty. I agree. This has been a really nice experience so far. You know, usually we're spending our days, problem solving and, helping customers and, in the throes of the business. So it's been nice to kind of slow down and, be a little bit more, in your own head and start to share, experiences and things like that. So I'm excited to be here with everyone. I'll start with kind of what my current role is here at Sentinel One. So as Patty said, Vice President of Revenue Operations. I have a kind of global purview of all the different operation functions that supports our sales organization. So things from deal desk to deal pricing, structuring, annual sales planning, compensation, kind of you name it, anything that supports kind of our go-to-market strategies. I lead the team around the world that actually hopefully helps, solve some sales problems. My education is I have a BBA in finance, which we'll talk about that, how I went from finance into, technology sales. And then I also have an MBA from the University of Michigan. Interesting fact is that I'm a first generation college grad in my family. I don't have anyone else in my family that has any kind of a college education. I started my career after my undergrad working actually in manufacturing. I worked at an automotive company for about almost 5 years. Learned through that experience. It was really good experience around, and it was in finance. So I learned, debits and credits, spreadsheets, numbers, Excel, Access database. It was, 20 some years ago. So those were the hot tools back then. Learned how to, that most business decisions usually have something to do with numbers. And so that really helped kind of shape more of my kind of overall perspective of when we're making, quality decisions as an organization, there is going to be, financial impact. And so I've definitely taken that. After several years of doing that, I, through my network, got connected with KPMG and decided to leave manufacturing, leave sort of the much more of a legacy industry and get into, helping companies. And so I got into management consulting, did that for 6 years, loved it. I tell people that was probably, one of my more favorite roles in my career. I did a complete career shift. I went from, looking at spreadsheets to all of a sudden traveling the world, got inside of many large Fortune 500 companies, figured out how their companies functioned, cultures, leadership, got into problem solving. It was I learned through that really communication skills, how to tackle a problem, how to look at a problem, come up with a solution, and really put together hopefully a compelling story. I got married in the middle of that and then decided that probably wanted to have a family, and spending 100 plus nights a year on the road really didn't make a lot of sense. So I, again, through my network, got connected with technology, and that was about 10 years ago. And so I've spent the last 10 years working at different technology companies, supporting sales, supporting sales through either sales finance or sales operations type roles. And my last two companies have been in the world of cybersecurity. So that's just a little bit about me. And then personally, so I'm married. I do have a 7-year-old daughter. I, grew up in rural Michigan. I lived in the Bay Area for about a decade and recently moved back to Michigan. I'm about 9 minutes outside of Chicago. I'm one of 4 kids. Patty, you know this about me. I'm pretty competitive, and I like to win. I say a lot of that comes from being one of 4 and having limited resources. You're fighting for attention, you're fighting for energy, and so I think that kind of spurs on some of my my competitive nature.
So what are some of your hobbies?
I used to really be a big runner. I've ran an ultra marathon. I've run the Boston Marathon. I've got a bad knee these days, and I'm getting older, so I've turned to my Peloton. But I do actually enjoy working out, and that's a way that I kind of alleviate stress in a lot of ways.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. It's interesting. I too am a first generation college graduate. We didn't talk about that when we were prepping, but same here. So Suzanne, would you like to take a few minutes to tell us a little bit about yourself and how you landed in cybersecurity, running the enablement for Sentinel One?
Yeah, I'd love to. It's funny, through this, I feel like I'm learning so much about the both of you. So this is just really fun. And I think it's really good to have to reflect on a lot of this. How often do you really look back at your career? So this is interesting for me. So I'll kind of start with my personal background. So I was born and raised in the Bay Area. I don't know if this is good or bad, but I live in the same town I was raised in, around the corner from my parents, but that wasn't really planned out, but I love it here. And I went to college in Southern California. I went to Cal Poly. I majored in political science. So I actually wanted to be a lawyer when I started college. I really thought that was my future direction. But I ended up getting into technology because I lived in the middle of Silicon Valley, and I was always surrounded by technology. I remember in high school, all my friends' parents were in tech, and so it was just always like a really exciting area for me. And I don't think it was any surprise that I got pulled into technology by some friends actually that were in sales. So my career really started in sales as an inside salesperson. It was a great job at the time. And I look back on it now, I can't believe how much I had to learn in such a short amount of time. But really, I was right out of college, cold calling people, just using at the time what were my, I would say my top traits, my top skills, which I was a people person. You know, I loved meeting new people. I really enjoyed understanding wanting to understand their business better. So it was a perfect fit for me, really. And that really led, my inside sales career led to just progressing through and becoming an outside salesperson. And then, you know, over time, I found you find what you enjoy most about, you know, the roles that you're in and the jobs that you have, the companies you work for. And for me, it really was always about, I really enjoyed helping other people within the organization, and especially like new sales reps coming on board. So I was lucky enough to have, you know, people help me, more experienced people really help me develop my sales skills. And that was really important to me. So I got an opportunity to go into enablement, sort of the opposite side, you know, take my sales skills, but apply it towards learning and enablement. And it was risky. You know, I hadn't really thought about taking a turn like that in my career, but it sounded fun. It was an area I was really interested in. So I took the role, and that really springboarded the next phase of my career, which really has been enablement and learning. And I love it. So, you know, a lot that I reflected on as we were, you know, getting ready to kind of talk about this. So yeah, that's my career. And I really got into cybersecurity because this opportunity came up, and cybersecurity is such an exciting area of technology, right? But I also find it's a niche market. I mean, most of the people at Sentinel One actually have background in security and cybersecurity, and it's a very specialized area within technology, right? So for me, I felt like an outsider coming into cybersecurity, and I learn every day more and more about it. And of course, it's front and center on the news too. So you couldn't be in a hotter area of technology right now. But I love cybersecurity. I have to say, out of all of the different technology areas I've been in my sales career, I think cybersecurity is the most exciting for sure. And definitely the most in depth. There's so much, you know, to learn, and it just changes so fast. So that's a really fun part of my job.
Yeah, that's really well said. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Well, I didn't really explain my role. So I was just so everyone knows, my role at Sentinel One is to run global sales enablement. And really what I focus on is our global sales team, helping them from the time they start on day one and then all the way through, you know, career growth, becoming a leader. So we're building out an extensive enablement function within Sentinel One. But this was a great opportunity to build something, you know, and really have a huge impact on a fast-growing company. And it was a perfect opportunity for me.
Yeah, it's super exciting. So just to kind of add to what Diana and Suzanne said. So as I mentioned earlier, Sentinel One is a pre-IPO company. The three of us have been here. I've been at Sentinel One the longest. I started a year ago this week. I think Diana's here, you know, 4 or 5 months. And Suzanne, I think you're here about 6 months at this point.
Yeah, I think I just hit 7.
Yeah, 7 months. So we are sort of a little bit on a rocket ship here. So that's kind of culturally how we roll, because the cybersecurity market is booming. Our technology is so innovative and really advancing the cyber posture of so many customers that we're growing at a very fast pace. So you can see that we've grown out not only the sales team, because I'm the vice president running government, healthcare, and education markets for Sentinel One, but also the support functions of the VP of Operations and Finance, as well as enablement, which are two critical pillars that support the growing sales organization. So the three of us work together. on a daily basis to make sure that we are enabling our sales teams with best practices around pricing, quoting, as well as, our go-to-market strategy around training and enablement. So that's what we all do together here. So a little bit about myself. I'm originally from New York. I've been in Maryland in the DC area supporting the federal government for about 15 years and the healthcare market. And my career started at EMC in the 90s in infrastructure. So I have a strong infrastructure background. And then I stayed with EMC while we made many acquisitions. I was with them from their first acquisition of Data General, which is a mid-tier storage solution line. But then they started to break into multiple markets, cybersecurity being one of them with their acquisition of RSA. So that was really my first introduction in 2002 into cybersecurity. I was responsible for selling their entire portfolio of solutions, backup, content management, again, security, and that's how I first started to look at the security marketplace. After I left EMC, I went for a couple of years to VMware to build cloud and cloud infrastructure solutions. And then I went to McAfee, and I was there for 2 years where I learned the cybersecurity space from 2013 to 2015. I stayed there for a little over 2 years until I went to one of their business partners, Tanium. So I've been in the EDR space for about eight years now, and I've been at Sentinel One for a year. Mostly focused on government markets since 2013. So that's my background. So I thought we would talk a little bit about taking some time to discuss, some of the best practices through the course of the career you just took us through that have helped the two of you, catalyst your career sort of to the next level. Like Diana, you talked a little bit about the shift that you made within your career. Maybe you could dig into a little bit more about, sort of the best practices and why and how you were able to do that, whether that's through mentors or what things really were the catalyst to your success.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I'd say the reason, my career has taken some shifts is I think I'm naturally wired that I'm curious. And I like to learn and I like to do new things. And once I figure something out, I sort of categorize it, put it in a box and put it on the shelf, and I want to move on to new things. So I think that's just in my DNA. I think what's helped me kind of make some of those shifts and broaden my career in a lot of ways is a couple things. I'd say one is my network. I don't think in the last, as I was thinking about prepping for this, I was really thinking about this. I don't think I've gotten a job in the last 15 years through just applying online or having a recruiter call me. All of my, my twists and turns have been someone I know in my network, knows me, knows my skill set, knows what I can offer, and has reached out. And so I'd say that's one of the better practices, I think, of just building out your network, whether that's, people that you worked with in the past, whether that's customers, whether that's, friends of friends, your neighbor. I mean, we all have networks, I think, and you can't undervalue that network. I think that network has been super important for me in my career. I'd say the other way that I think about it from a best practice perspective is I think about being opportunistic, and I don't mean that in a greedy, selfish way. I'm just very opportunistic. I want to do new things and want to learn new things, and so when an opportunity came my way, I wasn't afraid to go, yeah, let's do this. I'm not quite sure what I'm getting into, and there were a couple times I thought, what did I get myself into? But I was really opportunistic about, as an opportunity came my way, I just jumped in feet first. And it's turned out well overall. Again, there's been some times where I questioned a little bit of my movement there, but overall, it's what really kind of propelled me to kind of get to the level that I'm at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. And you, Suzanne?
It kind of similar. I mean, I think the network, having a strong network is so important. And sometimes you don't realize it until you really need it. I really found that, my network is what brought me to every role I've had and really every job I've had, literally from the very beginning of my first job in inside sales. But I've also been lucky to, always work for really, big, substantial companies. So the networks that you can gain from there are so huge. The other, another really important area, I think, is really around mentors. And it doesn't have to be a formal mentor per se. A lot of organizations now actually do have formal mentorship programs, which if your company does, I highly recommend that you take advantage of that. But just informal mentors, it's all about having people around you that you can learn from, that you admire, that you look up to, and they will inevitably give you advice on, the next step for your career, what you can be doing to even expand the role you're in. We always had opportunity. I always had opportunity for challenge, to sort of take a challenge project on, to expand the scope of what you know. And that was a really important area for me, because it's not something, you get so busy in your day job. It's not something you're always, aware of. But if you can take on new challenges, and try to expand the scope of what you're currently doing, that really opens up, new opportunity, and ultimately it'll usually open up new roles within the organization or, beyond. So that's an important area that really helped me.
Yeah, no, that's great. So a couple of things in reflecting on what you were saying earlier, and when we were prepping on this, for some of the younger people starting out, we all talked a little bit. Well, Diana really kind of, I think, had the finance background, and I think she kind of liked numbers. She was kind of always going to go in that direction. But I think for you and me, Suzanne, it was a little more fluid. And when we were first starting out, you could get a business degree or a marketing degree. Maybe you could get like some coaching around how to do a resume, but like there really wasn't a lot of guidance when you got your business degree on where you start out in a given field. My experience was that, I had a business marketing degree, and I thought I was going to go create PowerPoint slides and get some sort of entry-level marketing job where I would be supporting a CMO doing content creation and running campaigns. But my business school teacher said, no, you need to go sell something. And whatever you want to market, you need to sell it first so that people will respect you. And so I feel like now I probably would have picked something different. I might have gone to school. You can get a degree in entrepreneurship. You can get a degree in sales, and you can get a cybersecurity degree, right? So it's a little bit more, the opportunities are more expanded than I think the degrees that we had access to, which is really exciting. There's actually a question that came in that says, I'm fairly new to the cybersecurity field. This introduction has been very eye-opening to me. How would you fine-tune your network if your contacts are a little bit away from the cybersecurity, specifically the cybersecurity field? So I don't know if either one of you have anything specific about that. Yeah.
I mean, there's so much you can leverage just through LinkedIn. There are so many groups that you can join. And just as an example, when I sort of pivoted to sales enablement, one of the first things I did was I looked for anyone I knew in sales enablement, but also I looked for user groups. And I joined the Sales Enablement Society, and they have a Bay Area chapter, and they have meetings, and I've met so many people through that. So I really would start with LinkedIn groups, and do not be afraid to reach out to people on LinkedIn and message them, and you'll definitely find social connections that'll help you meet people and have a more ongoing relationship with them.
Yeah, I'm actually, I have kind of a good story to share with someone new starting out, how I got my job at EMC. I think Diana and Suzanne are starting to realize that I sort of, I have a tremendous network of people over the last 25 years and that I have kept in my network. And I consider them, my mentors and many of them my dear friends still. But when I first started out, I was in the copier industry before I got into IT sales. And I decided that it was time for me to move on from a management job selling copiers for Canon in New Jersey, shifting into IT. And I was sitting at my desk one morning and I opened up the newspaper and there was an article about this gentleman, John Chatwin, whose wife had just had a baby. He was an EMC sales rep in Jersey. And there was a picture of him with the fax machine in her delivery room. And it said, this was in 1998. It said the premise of the article was like, that he was going to make $1 million while still, building a family. And I was like, I think I'm going to go do that job. That sounds like something I want to go do. So, ironically, through my network, I called this other guy who was in the copier business, a VP at Minolta, who had been trying to recruit me. And we were both talking about leaving and going into IT, Jim Carroll. And I said, I found the place we're going to go. We're going to go to this company, this EMC company with the two. And he's like, oh my God, I just started there last week. So he took my resume. So he wasn't even in IT sales, but he'd just taken a job in IT sales, also in the copier background. My point being that you just never know through your network where they're going to land tomorrow. Like most of us, Diana, Suzanne, and I didn't start out in cybersecurity. I very intentionally went into cybersecurity, but you just never know through your network who they know or where they're going to be tomorrow, because Jim went to that job. The second part of the story is that I was interviewing and I was with my best friend from high school and my mom at dinner. And I found out through that dinner that her brother-in-law, who I've known since I'm 16, was actually opening the Atlanta office at EMC. And he is still one of my mentors today. I mean, he went on to run Pure Storage and, we've known each other for 35 years. But through that network, I was able to get my job and my opportunity at EMC. So you just never know like where people are going to end up or who even personally in your network knows people that can help you get where you want to go. I sell to the State Department. And through the course of the last 10 years, I've been able to help two very dear friends of mine, children, get into the Peace Corps through relationships that I have in the State Department. So you need to ask. You just never know. How do you fine tune your network? Okay, it says, second question. What advice would you give yourself first starting out in a corporate world, knowing what you know now? Anyone want to take a stab at that?
So much.
Yeah. Well, my stepfather told me when we worked together in the copier business, as a woman, he told me never to get anybody their coffee. That was a big one, but that was a big one back in 1990. Don't bring anybody their coffee. I was like, what? Bring people their coffee? But, that was something back then I guess people expected of women. But we've talked about this a little bit, I think, like what advice would you give yourself? I think one of the things we talked about was leaning in and sort of going for it and not second guessing yourself. I read this book, The Confidence Code, and it talked about how women will only apply for jobs if they have more than 90% of the skills on a job description, but a man will go for a job even if they only have about 50% of the required skills for a job. So I think one of the most important things is I wouldn't second guess myself, and I would go for things probably, I would have been more aggressive about maybe some of the things I pursued earlier on. I don't know, ladies, Diana or Suzanne, if there are things that you feel that you could share. I think it's a good question.
Yeah, I think that when we were prepping for this, I think the expression I gave both of you, a chuckle out of it was, I said, fake it till you make it, right? I think, that stat that you just said, right? Women have to have, feel like they have 80 or 90% of everything on that, roles and responsibilities, that job description before they even want to consider a role is something I would have told myself a long time ago when I was younger. Don't worry about it. A lot of roles, it's about having some knowledge. It's about having the right attitude. It's the right aptitude. Go for it. Like lean in a little bit, like you said, and just see what happens. We shouldn't hold ourselves back waiting until we think we've checked every single box on that checklist before we go for it. And so I definitely think that took me a little bit early in my career of, being a little more hesitant to raise your hand and ask for something, or ask for a promotion, or ask for the assignment, because I was waiting to prove myself, or I was waiting to build that confidence. I think you just need to go for it. And then if you have faked it, you've got to actually produce, right? You still have to, once you get the role, you've got to, produce and you improve yourself in the role. But I would just lean in a little bit and not be so worried about having all the skill sets.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's excellent. Suzanne?
I totally agree. Not to copy you, but I feel like the early part of your career, so often you're doubting yourself, you're building you're trying to build confidence, and it's so important that you just go for it and you take risk. Look for challenges and know that you can learn any skill. I mean, you do not have to know everything on a job rec. You shouldn't know everything on a job rec. You should know some things well, and you also should be really confident with what your natural skills are, and work on further developing, the skills that you need to do the roles that you are interested in. But definitely go for jobs that you are not fully qualified for, and believe that you're a good fit for them. Because you have to go into everything with confidence. And that's kind of where the fake it might come in, but you can fake confidence. I mean, it's all in your head, right? And once you've done it once, you develop confidence just from that experience.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. Two of the things we talked about, I think you have to think of things as progress, not perfection. Because I think that women tend to hold themselves to like a higher standard related to whatever information they're delivering. And we're very fortunate that we work for a progressive company, and we have an excellent CRO and wonderful leadership and great management practices. And our CRO, Mark Parinello, is very proactive about making sure that we have a balanced workforce on his leadership team. So we have a lot of women leaders. But I do think that we internalize, and we really, really focus sometimes on every word we're saying and how we're saying it and how we're perceived. When I get on an e-staff call and there's 23 men and me, it's a little bit intimidating sometimes. And, sometimes, you feel a little bit when you get off the phone, you start thinking like, what could I have done better? What could I have said better? So the other thing I would say is let it go. Don't ruminate over it. It probably wasn't as bad as you thought. Nothing's ever going to be perfect the first time. To Suzanne's point, take risks and go for it, what it is that you want. Even if at the end of the day you decide to take a job, and you find out that though you're learning a lot of new and different things, it's probably not something you're going to stay in long term. It's still a good experience that you can bring with you to the next experience that you get involved in, is what I would say. And now the questions are really coming in. So here's an interesting one. What is the best way to explore more areas in cybersecurity? I think as the most senior person in this group that has been in cyber the longest, again, starting to sell the RSA portfolio of solutions and the solutions that EMC acquired and added into the RSA umbrella, I had the experience to start to look at a lot of different areas like governance, risk, and compliance, as well as endpoint detection and response, next gen AV firewalls, because we were partnered with Cisco. So I think, and two-factor authentication, obviously, because of RSA. So security was something that was very interesting to me from the day we acquired RSA. I saw that the industry was going to boom. I just didn't really know when. And I think I timed it pretty well around 2013 when budgets really started to get behind the problem. I think for a long time, organizations were building out a lot of policy teams with CSOs heading them up, but they really didn't have any troops, and they really weren't building a very sophisticated cyber network. That obviously has changed dramatically now, right? And we know that it's, like Suzanne said, a dominating piece of the market and a thing that is very top of mind. So to me, I think the most important thing is to, just do your research. like there's so much information out there on the web about all different types of security tools and solutions. You can also look at portfolio companies and where they're investing. And there'll be a ton of startup kind of cyber companies that you can look and do your research. For me, as far as like why I picked, endpoint detection and response, it wasn't just because of that cyber technology. That was one piece of it. And I knew that there were a lot of legacy solutions out there that we could replace with a next gen tool. And I believed in what Sentinel One provides around automation, ease of use, time to value, and better protection overall from prevention through to, an incident and resolution of that incident. But I think you can really do a lot of research, through, again, LinkedIn, community groups around cybersecurity, but just, even just reading the newspaper every day, you're going to hear about great companies that are helping organizations advance their cyber posture on a fairly regular basis. There are dedicated correspondents that write about cyber in almost every major newspaper in the world. So I don't know if you guys have any other ideas about that.
Yeah, Patty, I think I'd add is, I think sometimes we think about, joining a technology company or joining a type of industry, and people think you have to be technical, right? I mean, most people that know me know I'm not that technical, right? I have a business and finance background, like we already discussed. So I think and we're hiring like crazy, right? There's plenty of roles and opportunities at cybersecurity companies that, you don't necessarily need to be the expert or an industry expert in it. There's plenty of really good opportunities where you can really build out your career and have a really interesting role without being super technical. So I think we shouldn't overlook that aspect of it either.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the reason that I felt passionately about having 3 different backgrounds join the webinar, to show and demonstrate that, it's not just running a sales organization or being an individual contributor around selling, or a traditional systems engineering type role where you're architecting security solutions. There are all types of roles within cyber that, we need help with, right? And that can be in finance, operations, enablement, inside sales, business development, marketing. And again, don't forget to go on the website, because there's plenty of career opportunities at Sentinel One, and it is a great company to work for. We're all extremely, extremely happy here. So one of the questions actually leads into one of the things that we talked about. So I'd like to shift gears a little bit. The 2 reasons that I kind of brought the 3 of us together for this conversation was, first, because of our diverse backgrounds, and second, because we're all women leaders that have children. So we've all had to manage that work-life balance. And I'd love to hear sort of from your perspective, Diana and Suzanne, like, how did you make that transition from being single, getting that MBA, getting married, to bringing, children into the world and balancing your career? I think you both have different stories to share, and I think it'd be interesting for the listeners to hear what you have to say. So Diana, would you want to take that first?
Sure. Yeah. So I'll start with saying, I don't know that I ever really get the balance right on a daily, regular basis. I think for me, I'm highly organized. I love a list. As you guys can see behind me, I've got plenty of them in front of me. So I tend to try to organize my days, my weeks, my months, my priorities, thinking with my team. What are we trying to accomplish? What do we need to build? I try to set out a plan. Then I leave some areas in that plan for flexibility, because, supporting sales, you never know what the day is going to bring. So I try to start my day with, I got a plan. I know where I'm going to spend time with my daughter, where I'm going to do drop-offs, or I'm going to do pickups, when I'm going to make dinner, but maybe jump back on a call, right? There's some balance and some rhythm that I try to get into my day. I don't always get it right, though. Like I said, some days I just fail. Some days I work 12 hours and, didn't see my daughter. But there are other days where I don't have a conference call that doesn't start till 9 o'clock. I can drop her off at school. I can make her breakfast. So I try to every day have a plan, but then leave some flexibility in there. And then when I don't get it right, I just give myself permission to not get it right. I don't have a lot of guilt around it. as I said earlier, I have one 7-year-old. It's a girl. I think I'm showing her that while you maybe can't have it all the time, you can be independent, you can have a voice, you can be a leader, and you can still be a mom. So I feel like even though sometimes I shut the door and she's outside there and she's not in here, I know she knows what I'm doing, and I think it's overall really healthy for her. So that's just kind of how I think about balance.
Yeah, that's good. So I actually, this was hard in the beginning, I will say. I think that when you don't have children, and if you are, really career driven and working really hard, it is a big adjustment, right? And for me, the most important thing that I would say to anyone is you have to go with what feels right for yourself, because all women, working moms that you meet will be different in some way. Some people are, they couldn't imagine staying home, being a stay-home mom. It's just they're not wired that way. It wouldn't make them happy. Other women would never want to leave their children to go to work. And that's okay. I mean, I think the hardest thing is trying to be both and trying to be everyone at once. And so I think you really just have to be honest with what feels right for you. And that's kind of the first piece of advice that I would give, because it took me a while to figure that out. And I actually took 6 years off after my second child was born. I decided that I wasn't doing a good job at doing both, and I decided to try, fully a full stay-home mom role. And I'll tell you, it was one of the best things that I could have done, because first and foremost, it made me see that I can absolutely be a stay-home mom and a full-time mom, and I loved every second of it. But I really appreciate my career. And I felt like before I had taken that time off, it was always like a push and pull. I never felt like I was 100% on either side. And I needed that time to really, figure it out. And it was great. And when I went back to work, I went back full time, thanks to my network. And I was right back. I felt like I was right back where I started. And that's how I knew it was right. And I'm definitely a better mother for it. And I know now how much my children actually do appreciate the fact that I have a career, and it really is having a very positive impact on them. And it takes a while to see that sometimes. Certainly when they're babies, you're not going to see that. But as they get older, it really is, I think it's a great influence on them to have, a career mother.
Yeah, no, I think that's really well said. So from my perspective, one of the questions that came in was about work-life balance, but also then there was another question about, like, if you had children, how do you balance? And Diana had sort of mentioned, using the Peloton, exercising on a regular basis. So I think when it comes to balance with or without children, you really kind of need to know your limits. I know that I don't like to be extremely cold, hungry, or tired. So the military probably wouldn't have been for me. So when I kind of get to that top threshold, I'm very sort of mindful that I probably need to step away for an hour or a half a day, or, it just depends how hard I've been working for how long. And if I get to that really, really sort of breaking point, I need to step away. And I do a lot of yoga. I'm also an avid runner. And that really helps me to process and to clear my mind. And incorporating that into the working mother scenario, I had 2 kids young, and I had a third child at 39. So I had 2 teenage boys and a newborn son when I was at EMC, and that was pretty intense. I remember one of my first days back to work, I was so threading the needle to get to a customer meeting that I ran out of gas on the highway. I mean, that was sort of the breaking point. You know what I mean? Where you're just barely getting your hair done and like getting your mascara on, and you're like trying to like pump and, get the note signed for the kids and make lunches and everything. And then you got to like get to T. Rowe Price by whatever it is, 9 o'clock. I think I was going to McCormick, and I ran out of gas on the side of the road, and I was like, this is too much. I need to slow down. This is crazy. And that's when I sort of like readjusted, and I've talked to the ladies about this, and I've gotten sort of really good at it, where I don't really feel guilty about like a lot of things that I do. I feel like, you know what? I'm going to order factor meals. I'm not cooking 5 nights a week. I'm just not doing it. I sub out my laundry. I, pay $15 a load, and it gives me time on the weekends instead of like running to Costco, cooking meals all weekend. Not that I don't cook. I do cook on the weekends, but, but to do all of those things that, quite honestly, it's a minor investment for me at this point in my career to sub that stuff out so that I can go skiing with my son for the day, or take, a hike with him, or, just do something that's more quality time instead of quantity. And to Diana's point, like, you know what, if every once in a while I have to be on a business trip and I'm like, not at that like, flute recital, or I miss one hockey game, I don't feel too guilty about it. I feel like, you know what, we went on an African safari and let's go enjoy that together. And like, so I really try to focus on what we do have and make the time that we are together really meaningful and life-changing. And not sweat the small stuff as much if I'm not there. And I also have a tremendously supportive husband that picks up the slack. So I feel pretty grateful about those things. So that's kind of served me well. Great advice. Okay, yeah, that was just a comment. Okay, so we have not too many more minutes. I wanted to just see if maybe the two of you had some thoughts or reflections now that you've both moved into leadership roles and you're, kind of at a more advanced phase in your career. What's really influenced your leadership style? Is there anything like top of mind that you would want to share with the group that might help them sort of take that next step in their career to shift from maybe an individual contributor to move into leadership?
Yeah. I remember when I did move into leadership, and I remember being actually really nervous about it because I hadn't taken a leadership course. I didn't know, how am I going to manage, what's involved in that. And I was very nervous about it. And I did a lot of online searching, and, but I mean, at the end of the day, being a leader, a manager it's just an innate skill that especially women, I think, have. Someone's dog needs some attention.
Sorry.
I learned my leadership skills from all of the managers and leaders I've had over the years. I've learned what not to do from the ones that did not serve me well. And I've learned what really had an impact on me as what I want to bring to my team. So, for me, it's just really looking at your own experiences with your leaders and your managers, and really being reflective on what worked and didn't work for you. But I think going into a manager or leadership role, to me, there's a difference. So when you can be a manager and be a really good leader, you can also be a manager and not a great leader. And obviously in bigger organizations, you're going to have an opportunity to do all sorts of manager and leadership type roles. And I strongly encourage everyone to go for it as early in your career as you can. And you'll find that it just really broadens your perspective, and it broadens your impact on the organization so much, because you can be a good manager and a leader, and really add so much more impact to the organization. I mean, that'll be your sort of career nugget. If you are a good manager, they'll recognize that, and they'll put you in other roles because of it.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up, Suzanne, because I do think that being a leader and being a manager are two very different things. You can be good at both, or like you said, you can be good at one or the other. I think for where I'm at in my career, I'm pretty purposeful about my leadership style. I think it's evolving though. I think depending on the team I'm leading, the organization, my experience, it's, it's constantly evolving. But I think, I think a manager is much more, tactical, administrative, is, getting the work done, is holding people accountable, is, having the team, it's hiring, it's firing. It's more administrative. And I think kind of where I'm at, and especially with my role here at Sentinel One, I'm a leader of leaders is kind of how I think about it. So I don't necessarily have a lot of individual contributors that, directly report to me, not to say that I don't have them on my team. But I think for me, it's really purposeful of my style. My style is set the vision, set the strategy, set the expectations, set the priorities, help my team understand where the company's going, what's the E-staff team saying, and what's the company saying, what is the board saying, but then what's my interpretation of that, and then what is the vision that I'm trying to paint for my leaders, and then I support them, and then I try to just kind of get out of the way and go, okay, here I've laid it out. Well, we're going to take some twists and turns because we're, Patty, like you said, we're a hyper growth company. Things are kind of constantly shifting, but it's for me about setting that vision and setting those priorities, and then supporting my teams and saying, what do you need? Let's talk about it. Where can I clear a roadblock? Where can I help with an action item? Where can I help with the budget? There's lots of different ways that we accomplish what we need to accomplish. And so it really, for me, is about setting that strategy and that vision, and then playing more of a supporting role and being there for them so they know that they can come to me and hopefully I can help them. But that's kind of how I think about it.
Yeah, and tying what you both said together, in my career, I always tried to, even when I was an individual contributor, like running large matrix organizations where nobody really reported to me, but my results were closely tied to those teams and their support. So I always tried to consider them almost as if I was the leader of the team, right? Running a big matrix organization. So I think you can start young, you can start early and start thinking about how you want to shape your leadership style. And I think you're right, Diane, it's very different being an individual first line manager versus being a leader, individual contributor, first line manager, and then a manager of managers as a VP. And I think you articulated it beautifully, of sort of the philosophy of how I approach it and try to approach it. Right now, I feel like I'm sort of building the plane and flying it at the same time, but I do have the strategy, and I'm now starting to let the reins go and let them go execute against that strategy, and then iteratively come back and say, where do we need to modify, right? Where do we need to maybe pivot in another direction? So I think all really good, valid points. There was one more question that came in, and I know we only have 2 minutes, so I was just going to kind of answer from my perspective. And then obviously you all know that you can reach out to us on LinkedIn. People talked about growing their careers. For me, it's very much about paying it forward, which is why I've taken this diversity and inclusion role inside of Sentinel One to help pay it forward to women leaders and, grow. We need more women leaders, and we need more women in cybersecurity. So we're happy to continue the conversations following this. But a lot of people ask, if you were starting out, what would you read? What books would you read? And I think you can go find a million management books. But Suzanne was talking about doing a lot of podcasts, and I feel very passionately about this mission in cybersecurity. I think it's a very important mission. It's not about just selling a product. It's really about helping my customers advance their cyber posture and be in a better place so that they don't end up on the Hill testifying or, with a major breach that's going to cost them, millions and millions of dollars. So I would recommend, if you're getting into cybersecurity and you really want to understand the history of sort of what's gone on with nation state attacks, 2 great books. One is This Is How They Tell Me the World Ends by Nicole Pearl-Roth. And anything by David Sanger is amazing, but his last book, The Perfect Weapon, was excellent. And I would start with Nicole's book first. She got into cybersecurity as a correspondent, very sort of haphazardly late, in her career. She wasn't really looking to report on it. So she tells the story in a very sort of easy to understand and digestible way. And I think there's a lot of good things that can make you a better better at what you do if you really understand foundationally what your customers are struggling with. So with that, I'd like to wrap it up for today. I'd like to thank Diana and Suzanne for being here with me. I'd like to thank WESIS for having us host this fireside chat today. And again, you know how to reach us on the Sentinel One website and or via LinkedIn or through WESIS. And we thank you for your time.
Thanks.
Thanks, Patty.
Thanks. Have a great day.
Bye.